Welcome to the Numerical Tarot, a new tarot paradigm, an alternative to tradition, an axial system of archetypal crystallography, a trans-culturally anthropomorphized life-biased binary influence calculator, a wisdom system and archetype enhancer with harmony of interpretation throughout. The content of all the videos in this series are excerpts, edits and brief summaries from the eBooks All Things Are Numbers and All Things Are Patterns, links below. For a more complete explanation of each idea, additional reading might be helpful. Hopefully the basic ideas come across enough to pique your interest in trying this alternative approach to tarot. In the previous videos in this series we created a theoretical model of existence, labeled it with a number line, divided that number line into a series of binary opposites to create a grid matrix of organization for ideas and words, which we then navigated by way of simple open or closed lines in a quintagram. Pretty cool. However, there is one anomaly to this design that needs to be addressed. Initially, it was proposed that we take our number line and keep dividing it until we arrived at the binary state of upright or reversed orientation for any tarot card. Upright and reversed were considered to be different for different suits. In the suits of addition, diamond, coin and multiplication, heart, cup, a reversed card would go from good to bad. And in opposite fashion, in the suits of subtraction, club, stave and division, spade, sword, a reverse card would go from bad to good. This design was in place for those who do not object to the idea that there is good and bad to be dealt with, and so want cards that address a full and complete spectrum of experience. But whereas this optional aspect came at the end of our multiple binary divisions, the decision to include good or bad into a quintagram, and instead create a hexagram, actually works better if we make that good or bad decision as our first act of binary divisions, rather than last. Here is why beginning a hexagram with the binary decision of whether something is good or bad works better than putting it last. By deciding the good or bad of a situation first, we are able to use our grid matrix of tarot suits as a calculator of binary influence. In the previous video we introduced the idea of taking the four suits of our deck design and duplicating them across from each other to create a larger grid that included the good and bad, or upright and reversed interpretations of each card on one large grid. By including all permutations of all cards in one grid, it becomes an easy task to print out this grid and use it as a calculator of binary influence. Here is how. In making a quintagram, or a hexagram, we could use the quintagram quilt just shown, or we could use a slightly modified version that has keywords included to remind us of what each binary subdivision is about. I call it the binary influence calculator. Here's how it works. Ask yourself, or someone else, to think of something. It can be anything. Perhaps an object in a dream. What does it mean? What are its archetypal roots? Then, just fold or cut along the various lines that correspond to the same opposites as those found within previously described binary influence charts, until you arrive at a single quintagram. Then, access the tarot card that corresponds to the quintagram that wins. This study has a multitude of possible interpretations and key words for each number or card, and many ways to access them. In fact, if the website just mentioned is still around, you can actually click on the lines of quintagrams to change them from solid to open, or vice versa, and immediately link to the page for that new card and all its descriptive text and brainstormed words of interpretation. At the very least, folding this calculator down to a single quintagram demonstrates, in a very real, tangible, visual way, the balance, symmetry, contrast and consistency of design used by the Numerical Tarot deck. I don't know of any other deck in the world that is laid out in such a way as to allow this type of analysis. You can try using this calculator with other decks, like the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, however. Because of discrepancies discussed in other videos in this series, the accuracy of the results will probably fall short in many areas. It would be best to use this calculator in conjunction with the Numerical Tarot deck. Sorry. If you want to try this technique, print out the calculator. Depending on when you are viewing this, there might still be a website with a larger image or PDF file that you could download and print. The binary influence calculator is handy for creating a quintagram in the hands of someone who has studied all the numerical models that have caused each word to be placed into each corresponding category. For those who don't want to do all that work, but just want to be directed to some interesting results, I have another option to offer, which I am calling the Dream Analysis Calculator. To use this calculator, pick a word from each pair of columns. Note the solid or open line above the option selected. Put the resulting solid and open lines together to create a Quintagram. Use this gadget with dream analysis. It's only 5 questions. Was the dream light and engaging or dark and daunting? Was it a palpable reality or an morphic fantasy? If the depths of the psyche can be fathomed, and these 5 questions answered, they will lead to a part of the deck matrix being presented in this study that is appropriate to the dream or part thereof, guaranteed. I have used this several times with some interesting success. But dreams are subjective. Am I fudging the results to suit my subjective desires? Can anyone else make this thing work? Technically, the 5-step decision process presented in the dream analysis calculator could be applied to anything in life. It is a filter. Run any thought or idea that comes to mind through it to see where it leads. I suggest using this chart with dream analysis because it is a subject of much mystery in need of clarification. Print out the dream analysis calculator. Put a circle around each solid or open line that goes with each answer chosen. Put those lines together, from left to right, to create a Quintagram. If the Quintagram that results doesn't sound like it is describing the dream in question, try rethinking 1 or 2 of the stages so that a new Quintagram results. If that Quintagram sounds more accurate, take note of how this process improved self-awareness of perceptive abilities. Like the I Ching that this system resembles, it is all about changes. I guarantee that one combination or another will result in a Quintagram that points to information that is relevant to the dream in question. It is all a matter of how perceptive we are about our own feelings regarding the nature of our dreams or parts thereof. If the dream analysis calculator works, and I think it has the potential to, it might be because it asks the user to identify several key components of psychoanalysis. For example, if we have a shadow side, it is possible that dark and shadowy dreams are telling us something about our dark and shadowy side. The differences between left-brained functioning people and right-brained functioning people tell us something about how balanced we are in our thinking as it pertains to the reconciliation of conscious and unconscious toward individuation. If we have both a male and female side to us, it is possible that feminine or masculine dreams or aggressive or submissive dreams are telling us something about that. If we are introspective and removed or extrospective and involved, it is possible that dreams involving remote observation versus involved participation are telling us something about that. If we are passive and calm or active and busy, it is possible that stimulating dreams or relaxing dreams are telling us something about that. These questions are all part of this gadget. The dream analysis calculator mimics the various ways that we think. But these stages of perception were not invented by studying the methods of Carl Jung, or Sigmund Freud or anyone else in the world of psychology. They were not in any way designed to duplicate these key components of psychoanalysis at all. They were in fact invented by slicing up the theoretical model of existence being offered in this study into subdivisions of opposites. That's it. These categories are in fact based on fundamental directions of orientation to an abstract entity: up versus down, left versus right, front versus back, out versus in, and on versus off. That's it. Pretty amazing, I'd say. In fact, one of the few things I have heard about Carl Jung is how he compared the concept of archetypes to the axial system of crystallography, where an underlying structure, involving invisible lines of force, predetermine the direction, and therefore shape, of evolving crystals. The system being presented everywhere in this study is just such a system itself. Axial, up, down, left, right, etc. are axial directions of orientation that exist before any manifest entity or notion of consciousness evolves to express them. I offer this gadget to any curious person as a way of getting to know the archetypal armature being described in this study. If it can also be applied to Jungian psychology, that is a bonus. As with any psychology or psychotherapy, some people are better at tuning into their psyche than others. Same with this device. Some will find it useful, others will be as defensive about its ability to tell them anything about themselves as an unwilling and unbelieving patient in the office of a Jungian psychotherapist. Also, like any psychotherapy, many lack the courage to face their demons and will take hurt feelings and run away to something more fluffy. This is an unfortunate reality. For those who are that type, be warned that the underlying system being put forth in this study employs balance, symmetry, contrast, and consistency. It tries to cover as full and complete a spectrum of human experience as possible, angels and demons. Because of this, it might be put to better use in the hands of a skilled therapist who can, over time and extensive psychoanalytical interviewing, Ask pertinent questions that will answer these 5 questions on behalf of those who are unable. But I offer it to everyone, because I believe in self-awareness and the quest for the self by the self. Enjoy. Or, don't enjoy. Yes, I can hear them already. Those who prefer to interpret tarot subjectively without regard for intended meanings given by authors. They will claim that calculating binary influence is absurd and psychically impoverished. They will balk at the obvious degree of structure being presented and claim it to be stifling to their spontaneous, visual, Rorschachian methods of interpretation by way of techniques like free association. To those of that prejudice, I would point out that choice is still open. This system, with all its structure, does not dictate exactly what a dream means. It is not a dictionary of dreams. The dreamer is still in control of what any dream means. There is no loss whatsoever in symbolic malleability. An image in a dream, or an image on a tarot card, can still mean whatever anyone wants it to mean whenever they want it to mean that, without regard for authored intent. All this gadget does is ask to have the resulting meaning of something. Anything. Whatever it might be. Run through this filter to suggest a possible source of archetypal essence. In defense of structure, I would remind those opposed to structure just how much structure there is to the fine art of astrology. The mathematical calculations of astrology represent a very precisely structured way of arriving at a pattern or constellation of influence that can be subsequently interpreted into the life of an individual. Quintagrams are also constellations of influence, but with much less math involved. In further defending structure, I would also point out that this system is not too dissimilar from that of the ancient structured system of I Ching, which has been around for a long time, and used with much success for many years by many people, including tarot interpreters. Like the I Ching, the methods being suggested here are open to changes. If a quintagram doesn't fit, change it. Change one of the lines and jump to another quintagram. Pretty cool. I don't know of any other tarot deck in the world with enough balance, symmetry, contrast and consistency to do that. In theory, what changing quintagrams does is give the reader feedback about how knowledgeable they really are concerning the nature of what they think they know. That theory is of course based upon the theory that the theoretical model of existence being presented in this study is in fact a good and accurate representation of the transcendental, primordial patterns that make up the universal blueprint of the archetypal armature from which our universal consciousness draws images in our minds. I think it is. And I have done my best, and will continue to do my best, to describe this archetypal armature, or what I think I know it to be, as best as I can with the most accurate words and pictures I can possibly muster. That is the purpose of structure. If I am wrong about my feelings that this structure reveals an archetypal armature, then every idea in this study is as random as anyone else's random, Rorschachian interpreting. But, if I am correct about my feelings that this structure reveals an archetypal armature, and that the influence of that armature can be calculated, then I would think that what we have between us is a valuable tool of symbolic and psychic decipherment, and not psychic impoverishment. But for those who are still concerned about the stifling effects of structure, be reminded that this calculator is not designed to replace spontaneous, visual, Rorschach-chain methods of interpretation and free association that ignore intended, authored meanings. What this calculator is meant to do is supplement those techniques by amplifying the user's awareness of archetypal essence. I believe amplification is a Jungian term. My use of the word would be to suggest that by running something, like a dream, a reading, an image, a person, a place etc., through this filter, our focus of attention is directed to an amplified awareness of the archetypal essence that is relevant to the dream, reading, image or whatever it is in question, whether we have first used techniques of free association or not. In normal psychoanalysis, a therapist might ask hours and hours of questions to assist us in focusing toward the archetypal essence of a symbol, either before, during or after the utilization of free association. This system only asks us to answer 5 critical questions. Those 5 questions could be phrased 100 more ways than I've put them here, and presented over the course of hours and hours of therapy, if I was a therapist. I've done my best to sum them up within a single chart. For those who need psychotherapeutic help in understanding the nature of each pair of opposites being presented, I wish I could offer hours of therapy, but I can't. For those who don't need this kind of help, I think this gadget might just work. Please let me know. I have been experimenting with this dream analysis calculator for a while. I have found that I can apply it to a lot more than just dreams, or even tarot. It can literally be applied to anything. For example, I can just think about the conditions of my day at any moment in the day, and, like a one-card reading, be led to a Quintagram that is relevant. Except, unlike tarot or I Ching, I am not being random. I'm actually asking my subconscious or unconscious to tell me how existing conditions are affecting me right now. The theory being that the 5 stages of the dream analysis calculator, actually 6 when we include the additional decision of moderate versus extreme, represent 5 avenues of perception that are at work in our minds 24/7 365, while awake and living, or asleep and dreaming. The other day I was flipping through an art magazine full of curious images. I tried applying the dream analysis calculator as if an image I saw was my own, taken from a dream of mine. The resulting Quintagram I was led to was always interesting in its apparent relevance to the image in question. If the artist who created the image used this gadget, would they arrive at the same Quintagram I did? Does their image have an intrinsic archetypal essence? Or would discrepant results reveal to the artist that the message they intended was not the message I got? Would the artist be interested in knowing that, or not? Another interesting experiment to try. Enjoy. In the eBooks mentioned at the beginning, there are pages and pages of possible meanings. I believe that interesting results will be found by reading through these words. When examining these words, don't be literal, and give up if you don't immediately see words that are relevant. Like tarot or I Ching, there is still plenty of interpretation left to do, even with this technique of calculation. Keep an open mind. Let me know how it goes. Here is one more idea. Inasmuch as many compare a tarot reading to a dream, I would suggest answering these 5 questions during any reading. It might prove interesting. Of course, one would have to use one of my decks to make it work, because the first thing to do would be to count how many positive and negative cards there are, in order to determine the light-dark nature of the reading. Most decks do not use balance, symmetry, contrast and consistency in their design. Only with such attention to balance could we also count how many quantitative or qualitative cards there are to determine the left-brained, right-brained nature of the reading. With a balanced deck, we could then count the number of cards from the beginning or end of the number line to determine the male-female nature of the reading. We could then count to determine the introspective, extrospective nature of the reading. Then we could count the number of odd and even cards to determine the active or passive nature of the reading. What Quintagram results? Does it have any relevance to the reading? Give it a try. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope it made sense. Links to ebooks, decks and merchandise below. And if anyone is interested in drawing a deck based on this system of organization, don't hesitate to contact me for a collaboration.